Good morning. I'm joined today by Mayor Barrett, Chief of Patrol Harpole, Chief of Detectives Jessup, Chief of Risk Management Carrie Ann Yerkes, and Deputy Chief of Patrol Michael Brunson. I'm going to give you an update based on our experiences and activities last night. I'm going to start by making what I believe to be some very important points about community resilience and community cooperation. Yesterday, the mayor and I met with a number of pastors and community-based leaders with whom we've established relationships through the Mayor's Office of Violence Prevention and the Police Department Office of Community Outreach and Education. These are community partnerships of some standing. And we urged them to help us last night by hitting the streets, going to the vigils, going to the street corners, and urging calm. That while all of us recognize that there are many long-standing issues that aggrieve communities plagued by intergenerational poverty, the fact of the matter is that violence solves nothing except risking the lives of the community, damaging its economic infrastructure, and truncating the opportunities for the young people that find themselves under arrest for activities they might not well have engaged in with appropriate adult supervision. The community stepped up last night. Those of you who were out there saw in many instances people preaching on street corners, counseling small groups of individuals. A number of individuals spoke at the vigil last night, which could easily have been an excuse for some folks to incite, but rather there were consistent calls for calm discussion and peaceful change. That had, I believe, a significant impact on the amount of disorder last night, which certainly by Saturday's standards was far less significant. I'm specifically going to mention a few people who were very helpful, but I want to make it clear that these are a few of the people who acted as coordinators. There are many more folks from both public and private life who engaged the community in these street-level discussions. Greg Lewis from Pastors United, Marley Miller from Micah, Teresa Thomas Boyd, the Executive Director of the Central City Churches, and Alexis Twitto, who is a Salvation Army Chaplaincy Program Coordinator with whom we have a relationship, and many others as well. It was a very significant component last night of what we hoped to accomplish. I also want to take pains to mention the community itself. The community was a victim of the disorder and the damage more than anybody else. And large numbers of those community members, as you saw yesterday, trying to repair that damage, clean up after that damage, carry on as normal a life as they can despite the loss of jobs and amenities that was caused by the disorder, have themselves a resiliency that many can admire, and something we're proud to work with. I'm going to also take an opportunity to commend the members of the Milwaukee Police Department. We also had a number of partners there yesterday from the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office. And I think once again you saw a great deal of tactical and strategic restraint being exercised. Yesterday we had over 30 shot spotter activations. Gunfire remained a problem last night, as well as gunfire in the vicinity of officers that were attempting to restrain what disorder did occur. Despite that fact, once again, none of our officers returned fire. It would have been reckless given we couldn't tell where it was coming from. But the point once again is we were able to exert significant amount of control over the streets without resort to deadly force. Last night we made a total of 14 arrests, 11 adult males for state disorderly conduct, 3 adult females for state disorderly conduct. They're all from Milwaukee. As I said before, we had 30 shot spotter activations between 8 p.m. and 3 a.m. in the areas bounded by Center to Keefe, 51st to 20th Street. We had 3 squads were damaged. The bricks were thrown at 2 of them. The Bearcat was again struck by 2 firearm bullets to the windshield. 1 automobile was set on fire late in the evening, about 1:30 in the morning. There were a number of dumpster fires, and 1 couch was set on fire, and 1 store suffered broken windows. There was a related shooting. An 18-year-old male suffered a single gunshot wound to the neck at 11 o'clock at 43rd and Burleigh during one of the many shots fired incidents. He's continuing to receive medical treatment, does not appear to be in danger. There was 1 reported use of police force. 7 of our officers were injured last night. 4 Milwaukee County Sheriff's deputies were injured by flying rocks and bricks to the knees, ankles, hands, and shoulders. District 1 officer from the MPD suffered an injury to his right foot from a brick. 2 of our neighborhood task force officers from the Milwaukee Police Department suffered glass fragments to their eyes when concrete came through the windshield of their squad car. I also had an opportunity to talk to all of these officers. I was out there last night myself till about 2 o'clock in the morning. I want to report that their spirits are high. Obviously, they've got a lot of concerns for their public safety, for their personal safety, and for the safety of their colleagues, but they're very much committed to the mission. And every time we brought them in to try to arrest them to send them back out again, they were enthusiastically ready to go out and protect the community. I did talk to one of our officers trained in the major incident response team, and it appears that his riot helmet received a graze wound to the back of it, probably from a firearm, and we're very, grateful that he was not significantly issued. I talked to the officers where the brick hit their cruiser, and one of them was suffering a lot of pain in his eyes. My understanding, he's been treated and released. So this was not an evening of insignificant risk for our officers, but I am grateful to report, and they would be proud to know that they successfully protected the community last night, as there were virtually no civilian casualties as a result. There was no significant fire damage. Once again, certainly compared to a Saturday night, the streets were maintained at a level of control far more effectively than we were able to marshal during the first night of this disturbance. We're going to continue to reach out to the faith community and community-based leaders to help us again on the streets, talk to people, and get them to recognize that there are other avenues towards change other than violence. And we're going to continue to deploy our officers in a tactically restrained but nonetheless effective manner in order to take control when necessary, when events become a threat to community stability and order. So that's my overall report, and I know Mayor Barrett would like to say something now. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Chief. I want to begin by also commending the community groups, the pastors, the church members who were out there yesterday morning cleaning up, who were there at the prayer vigil last night. That has had a powerful impact, and I am specifically asking the pastors and the community groups to continue to be involved in this effort. By having them as part of this effort, I think is making this situation better than it otherwise would be. I also want to commend the tremendous professionalism that I have seen from law enforcement. I think every member of this community should be thankful to the members of the Milwaukee Police Department, to the deputy sheriffs who put their lives on the line every day, but certainly were out there over the weekend in very challenging circumstances. I'm certain that for most, if not every single police officer, this was the most challenging weekend of their career. And they performed in an exemplary fashion. They were professional, they were courteous, they were respectful, they worked with each other very, very well, and that has to be recognized. I also want to say that the arrests that were made, I think, are quite indicative of what's going on here. We've got a lot of young people involved. I was pleased when we looked at the arrests from yesterday that there were no minors that were arrested. All of the arrests yesterday were for state disorderly conduct. Those were all adults. Having said that, I want every parent, every guardian to know that there is a curfew that will be more strictly enforced tonight for teenagers. For teenagers. The curfew is a curfew of 10 o'clock on weekdays. So parents, after 10 o'clock, your teenagers better be home or in a place where they're off the streets. We have been in conversations with the city attorney's office in case we need to do more than that for a more widespread curfew. But there is a curfew that is in existence right now for teenagers. And I want every parent, every teenager to know that. This is not the place where you go to gawk. It is not the place you go to take pictures. It's not the place you go to drive your car around right now. Again, we will be talking to the city attorney even more throughout the day to see if we have to take more extensive steps. I also want to say this because my heart is near and dear to the Sherman Park neighborhood. I lived in that neighborhood for 11 years. I know many people who live in that neighborhood. They love their neighborhood. They're proud of their neighborhood. There are families who have been there for 20, 30, 40 years. They want their neighborhood back. And they want the outsiders that are coming into their neighborhood to leave. As the chief mentioned, we had tremendous community involvement yesterday in a positive way in the morning, in the afternoon, through the vigil that was at 6, 7 o'clock at night. We also know that by 10:30, that there were groups of young people in particular who were traveling through the streets. Those individuals, in my mind, are deliberately trying to damage a great neighborhood and a great city. They are deliberately trying to damage Sherman Park and this city. And as the chief said, we have issues in this city. We know there are issues. There's too much poverty, there are housing issues, there are public safety issues, there are education issues. None of those issues get addressed if your intent is to inflict property or personal damage in this great neighborhood. And so I'm calling on every single resident of this city to make sure that they are getting the message across to everyone. Do not do further damage to this great neighborhood. And law enforcement has done a phenomenal job, but we're going to make sure that there is peace and order restored to this neighborhood, because there are too many good people in this neighborhood who do not deserve this. They do not deserve this. And the fact that you've got some angry people who want to cause problems is something that we will not tolerate.
Questions?
Chief, you and the local mayor have commended your officers for doing a fine job. The rest of the after the protest. Did it offend you that Sheriff Clark put out a request for the National Guard to step in when it appeared that you guys had everything under control?
I think he was obviously acting in what he thought was the best interest of the community. It's always better to coordinate these requests than to not coordinate these requests. But we've got a good relationship with the Guard independently, and although we don't foresee a need from them in the immediate future, it is certainly always good to have assets available if necessary. No.
Chief,
Yes.
with the number of shots that were taken at the windshield of the Bearcat and the glancing blow to a helmet, are there people trying to kill law enforcement officers?
It certainly appears there are people willing to shoot at them without concern for whether or not they injure or kill them. Yes, there are, as you know, an extraordinary number of guns on the streets of this city. A lot of people don't know that we probably confiscate proportionally as many or more guns than any city in America. We've already gotten something close to 1,600 firearms out of the hands of criminals so far this year. Last year we seized 2,500 firearms. This is in a city of 600,000. I remember 2 summers ago we had some colleagues from New York City out here looking at one of our systems, and I was stunned to find out that at that point in time New York City had only seized 200 more guns than we had. Their 8 million were 600,000. So obviously the wide variety of firearms available to our criminal community is a cause of great concern and alarm to us, and it has been. And shots are being fired in great volume in that neighborhood. Now, we don't have, thank God, it appears, snipers, but we do have people who are recklessly firing firearms generally, and clearly some of them are firing them at the police. And that obviously has an impact on the fact that overwhelmingly when you're doing crowd control, you're doing non-lethal deployments whose goal is not to use deadly force at all, and those officers are very vulnerable to armed assault, and that is a concern. So it has slowed down some of our deployments because we have to take that into consideration now when we are moving on a group of people who are trying to cause disruption.
Is there a concern that the uniform is a target right now in the city?
I think there's a concern, to some extent everywhere in the United States that the uniform is a target. I mean, this is a complicated time for us, all right? And we recognize, 50 years ago, the Kerner Commission came out with a report on civil disorder. And what did it find? That in every major city where there had been a major civil disorder, whether it was Newark or Detroit or anywhere else, the flashpoint had been a police action, but the causes were much deeper. All right, the police are the symbols of government. We are the most active public service in disadvantaged communities because we're available 24 hours a day. And we're expected to deal with a wider range of social as well as criminal problems. That makes us both necessary, but it also makes us symbolic. And when you're symbolic, you can be a target because of that symbolism. And that hasn't changed in the last 50 years. And unfortunately, right now, I think that's, for the time being, playing itself out here.
Chief, the family of Seville Smith was passing around a photo last night at the vigil showing a gun inside a car. They said he was not armed at the time that officers shot him, that gun stayed in the car.
Yeah, that's totally wrong. Just totally wrong.
Do you think you'll release the video? How is that going to work with the DOJ?
Well, it's day by day. As I said, it's only been 48 hours since this incident occurred. Let's keep that in mind. We're doing everything we can to expedite being able to share what actually occurred. But the fact of the matter is that this individual had a gun in his hand when he was shot.
What's the process for that like? Do you have to get permission from the DOJ?
Well, we have to get it. We have to assess where they are in the investigation. Again, you recognize that these things are evidentiary in nature and part of the investigation. Now, for example, today there was an autopsy conducted on the decedent, and it's been reported to me that the wounds the decedent received were consistent with what we understood to be the truth. He sustained a chest wound and an arm wound. That much we now know. So again, this thing has to be methodical. Obviously, pieces of the investigation will come out somewhat disconnected from each other, but I'm confident that when the total picture is told, we'll see that it's consistent with our understanding of what occurred.
You think more should have been done to mobilize or prepare, given what's the context of Ferguson and Baltimore? Should your mobile ground control team have been in place Saturday night?
Well, there's ample opportunity for second guessing, I'm sure. This is not the first time our police officers have been called upon to use deadly force, and we have not had this occur before. And again, I think it's an error in narrative to assume that this is ipso facto, police shot somebody, it's controversial, so let's have a riot. There's a lot going on in the neighborhood. There's a lot been going on for years and years. The fact of the matter, again, is that regardless of the facts of this situation, clearly there was an undertone of tension that erupted in violence, whether the shooting turned out to be completely justified or whether it wasn't. That wasn't the issue. The issue was this is a flashpoint. This causes a crowd to come together. This time, unfortunately, those crowd conditions resulted in violence and damage.
Should you have expected that, given what's happened around the rest of the country?
We've policed an awful lot of demonstrations these last 2.5 years. We had a critical incident ourselves 2 years ago. It's resulted in literally dozens of demonstrations. We have policed all of them in that incident, virtually all of them without arrest, and none of them with injury. So we have generally been prepared for what we have had to deal with. This was, quite frankly, unanticipated. Sorry? It was a suspicious vehicle check. I mean, as I said yesterday, this incident, I don't think it took 20 seconds. It happened that rapidly. Okay, so, I don't have all of the facts. They saw a vehicle, a rental car in a neighborhood. They decided to make inquiries before they even spoke to anyone. 2 individuals were fleeing from the car, one with a gun in his hand. I mean, there was just virtually no reaction time.
Have you spoken to the family?
No, I have not.
So when you say suspicious vehicle, is that because it was a rental car or because it was associated with?
We have not interviewed the officers. As I said, they're going to be interviewed today, is my understanding.
Can you talk a little bit about when people watch this on TV and see people throwing rocks at police and they're just asking why don't they go and arrest them? Can you explain how that works and why we don't see that right away?
Well, I mean, again, it's essential for the police to maintain discipline and coordination when we are trying to deploy in such a way as to render the streets safe. We recognize that in so doing, we make ourselves targets, okay? Some ways we become the focal point, but better us the focal point than innocent community members or stores being set on fire. So we accept the risk that engaging makes us the target, okay? We have to rely on our training and our protective gear and our movements to try to keep us safe. So we had a lot, you saw, we had very many chunks of concrete thrown at us and bricks at us last night. And we recognize that that's a lot of acting out behavior. We have to move slowly and cautiously because the same people we're trying to control, we also have to protect ourselves. And we're not going to be breaking ranks to go tackle somebody or bring them to the ground or tase them or hit them with something. Then the goal is to clear the streets and make the neighborhood safe, not to win a fight. All right? And I think some folks watching these videos think we're in some sort of, war with the community and we've got to win the fight. No, we've got to maintain the peace. That puts us at risk. It's a risk we have to take, and one that I'm proud to say our officers did with great restraint.
Can you explain what the status of District 7 is right now as far as, is it open to the public?
Yeah, it's open to take citizen complaints, and people can do walk-in traffic. Obviously, we had some threats made against it yesterday. There was a demonstration outside of it yesterday. We had some folks from Chicago come to town. What are they called? The Revolutionary Communist Party of Chicago showed up. And actually, they're the ones that started to cause problems late in the evening by marching and trying to take over Sherman and Burleigh. That was about 11:30 at night. We had made it to 11:30 without significant issues, and then we had these characters show up and decide to make a statement, and that obviously caused some issues.
Is that something that you're worried about? We've seen that in other situations in other cities in the country, people coming in from out of town, agitating the situation that already exists.
Well, it is a concern insofar as the fact that, all right, there are certain similarities in many of our urban centers that are the same soup from which high rates of violence as well as high rates of social disadvantage are co-located. We've got enough to deal with at the same time. But what happens very often is folks have there are a lot of agendas out there. To the extent that someone can fit a specific city's narrative into their national agenda, they'll come and try to use that for their purpose. I think we've seen that in other cities. Certainly doesn't make things easier. And all too often, they're able to attract attention to them, quite honestly, away from whatever extant issues there are in the city that need to be grappled with. So we're alert to that, and we're hoping that by way of our behavior, all right, and the restraint with which we are consciously trying to demonstrate to the broader community, as well as our community outreach and the community's own efforts to self-heal and to maintain calm, can show that this is a different narrative, and we don't need folks coming in here to try to fit it into some other narrative and exacerbate the situation.
Can you talk about tonight, if you plan to approach anything?
I'm sorry?
Have you planned to approach tonight any differently?
We're going to continue to use the essential tactics we're using right now. Obviously, these are fluid situations, and we'll have to adapt those tactics as time goes by. I know the mayor's got a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm curious, does it become more difficult for you every day that you wait for this video to be released?
Well, I said yesterday, and I'll say it again today, I want the video released. I believe the video will provide a lot of context as to what's going on. I understand the way the law operates. I'm going to urge again that it be released as quickly as possible.
When is that?
And I don't know the answer to that question. Again, I don't know whether the officer has been interviewed yet. I don't know what the state is planning on doing on that. I think it would be helpful to have it released. And as I said yesterday, I have not seen the video. I saw the still shot taken from the video in which the individual had a gun in his hand. So that goes to your question. I've seen a picture with the individual with a gun in his hand.
The folks that I spoke to this morning said it's one thing to hear you say this.
And I understand that, and I agree with that, and I totally agree with that, and I want it released. And again, to the extent that I'm urging the state to release it, I will again urge the state to release that video.
Mayor, you spoke with Valerie Jarrett, I guess, yesterday. Is there
Yes.
any update today with the White House?
I've spoken to many people. I've spoken to her. I've spoken to both senators. I've obviously had a lot of conversations with Congresswoman Moore. They've said that they'll be helpful any way that they can. And as time goes on, we're going to obviously be making some requests to them. I am concerned about what this does, again, to this neighborhood, because it's such a good neighborhood. And as someone who lived in this city when we had the disturbances in 1967, I know the economic toll that those disturbances took on those neighborhoods. I do not want to see the same thing happen in 2016. I believe we're more resilient, but that's why I stress the individuals who are doing this are making it more difficult, not less difficult. They're making it more difficult for us to attract investment and jobs in the very neighborhoods where we need them the most. The chief has oftentimes said, crime causes poverty, and I agree with that. And that's why this has to end. It has to end because it's wrong, but in the long term, we know we have to have more jobs in the community. We know there has to be more investment. And you'd have to be crazy to think that this activity is in any way helping that. It is hurting those efforts.
Mayor, people in the neighborhood last night said, you guys are speaking to each other and you're speaking to us, but nobody's going there and talking to them. Are you going to go out to that neighborhood and talk to these people and personally appeal to them on this situation?
I will certainly do. I've been there. I've been in this neighborhood again. As I said, I lived in that neighborhood 11 years. I've walked the streets countless times. I will continue to do that, yes.
Reach out to the family of Seville Smith?
I will, absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes.
Call them and even apologize or express condolences.
Actually, I had a phone number, and I tried to call the phone number. It didn't work, so I have made that attempt, and I'm going to make that attempt again.